It's my honor to introduce Joe Biden, who on Wednesday announced his candidacy for President of the United States. As chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Joe Biden is not only the champion of a bipartisan bill to oppose the president's tragic efforts to escalate the war in Iraq, but he's also put forward a plan to bring our troops home and achieve peace in that region. A plan you can read at joebiden.com. As chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Joe Biden led the fight to keep Robert Bork off the Supreme Court, passed the Violence Against Women Act, and put 100,000 cops on America's streets. With strong support from organized labor and the black community, Joe Biden beat long odds an incumbent Republican at age 29 to win election to the United States Senate. Joe Biden doesn't just talk about middle-class family values, he lives them every day. He takes the train home at night to Wilmington to be with his family. His wife Jill is a teacher. They have 3 children and 5 grandchildren. It's my pleasure to introduce Joe Biden.
How was your week? It's been a hell of a week. I want to say that I truly regret that the words I spoke offended people I admire very much. But I'm humbled that so many of these same people, as well as many of you in this room, judge them by my history and my heart. And for that, I'll be forever grateful to all of you. Mr. Chairman, as you and our fellow Democrats know, this administration has dug America into a very, very deep hole. America is more isolated, consequently less secure, and the American people are more uncertain about their future than any time in the last half-century. The American people are looking for the Democrats to produce someone who can guide us through the difficult decade ahead, as well as someone who understands the problems and pressures facing the middle class. They're looking for someone to restore America's greatness. And folks, that seems to me to be the job description that all of us, and the job all of us are applying. In Iraq, the president took us to a war unnecessarily, without enough troops, without the right equipment for those troops, or the care for them when they came home. And most of all, he sent them without a plan, without any plan. My fellow Democrats, the price of that failure can be measured in the blood we have shed and the treasure we have lost. 3,067 dead, 23,000 wounded, and over $350 billion committed thus far with no sight and end. Folks, we must stop this war. In order to do that, we have to stop the sectarian cycle of revenge in Iraq. And to do that, it's basic. We need a plan. And that plan must first and foremost be to separate the combatants and give them a political way forward. I have a plan to do just that. Give each of these factions breathing room in their own regions, with control over their local police, control over the fabric of their daily lives, their marriages, their education, their jobs. Give the central government responsibility for borders, currency, and the army. And guarantee the Sunnis their fair share of the oil revenues. And maybe most importantly, draw down, do not escalate American troops. For that is the only way to force Iraqis' leaders to reach a political settlement. And we have to make Iraq the world's problem, not just ours. And we do that by having the United Nations convene the world's major powers to insist that the regional powers around Iraq abide by the political settlement as reached. Ladies and gentlemen, the President's surge is not a solution. It's a tragic mistake, and I will do everything in my power to stop it. And one more thing I'd like to directly to President Bush. Mr. President, the majority of Americans who oppose you in Iraq are not the ones emboldening the enemy. That's the one mission you have accomplished. That old saw. You pull that out of the drawer every single time, Governor, and they want to stop criticism. The American people have enough. Folks, at this moment in our history, I believe America is looking for a leader with the breadth and depth of experience in world affairs, where they fully understand that President Bush is going to lead the next president with literally no margin for error. The next president, the moment he or she takes office, will have to immediately end the war in Iraq, and even more critical, will have to immediately turn to other simmering spots in the world before they explode. And here at home, it will not be enough for the next president to have the right plans and policies. The American people have to believe. They have to believe that our nominee understands what they've been dealing with in their daily lives for the past 6 years. They know we need an energy policy to free us from the axis of oil and to turn around global warming and restore our planet. But the one thing they don't believe is that Washington understands just how hard it has been for them the last 6 years to heat their homes and fill up their gas tanks. I understand. I can remember as a young kid answering the back door as the bill collector stood there about to turn off electricity and having to look him in the eye and say, no, my mom is not home. I understand. Americans know we need national health insurance. We all talk about it. They know it. You know what they doubt? They doubt whether we fully understand what it's like to lie in bed. Like 47 million Americans without health insurance, staring at the ceiling, and then looking over at their pregnant wife and wondering, if it's a premium, will I lose my house? Will I lose everything I own? I understand. I can remember 20 years ago being wheeled into an operating room, being told my chances weren't very good. But literally, thank you to God that I would not leave my family with insurmountable debt because I had insurance. I understand, and so do many of you. American people understand more than we do. But the ticket to the middle class is a college degree. But they wonder whether or not Washington understands what it feels like as a parent to look in the eyes of your child, knowing that you have no financial means to help them get to college. I understand like many of you. I'll never forget the look in my father's face the day he came back after having been denied a bank loan to help send me to the University of Delaware. I understand. I understand, like many of you in this room, understand the aspirations as well as the struggles of the American people. And the reason we understand them is there are struggles. They're what our party has been about dealing with for the past 200 years. Ladies and gentlemen, they're also our values. They're America's values. And I promise you, like all of you in this room, I will fight with every fiber of my being to keep America focused on the values that unite us, rather than the wedges that have been used to divide us over the past. Folks, I guess my primary message to you is I am absolutely, positively sure that the American people are ready, and so am I. For not one single time in the history of this great country have the American people in a moment of crisis ever let their country down. And we have to remind ourselves as Democrats, it's been the historic role of the Democratic Party, from Jefferson to Jackson, from Roosevelt to Clinton, to remind America of that legacy, to summon us to the moment to make America the light of the world again. And I pledge to you, as your president, that's exactly what I will do. Thank you very much. May God bless you, and God protect our troops.
For New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson was written by Linda Lynch, the wife of journalist and New Mexico resident Paul Salopek. Last fall, Governor Richardson traveled to Sudan to rescue Paul and two colleagues from a Sudanese jail. Quote, I first spoke to Governor Bill Richardson on the 22nd day of my husband's imprisonment in Sudan. Paul would be held for 34 days in the vast and hollow plains of Darfur. Thousands of miles away in our desert home in New Mexico, this was a chaotic time of vivid fear. When Governor Richardson learned of our situation, I met a composed and wise human being who extended a remarkable, knowing empathy. He seized immediately what the complex circumstances demanded, and I watched as he swiftly opened a dialogue that held my husband's life in the balance. It was not long before I witnessed the governor's unrivaled ability to wrest a moment of reason from a government that otherwise shatters lives. He brought Paul home. My husband is a gifted storyteller. He tells the stories of people whose lives have been shattered. I am blessed to know their stories, as I am blessed to know Governor Bill Richardson, who himself has the gift for guiding hardened leaders toward their own humanity, if only for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Bill Richardson.
Invited to speak here today, we were told that each of us would only have 7 minutes. 7 minutes to tell you how we better create jobs, expand health care, save the environment, improve our schools, balance the budget, fight terrorism, get out of Iraq, and bring peace to the Middle East. I don't need 7 minutes. I can do it in 4 words. Elect a Democratic president. Political speeches. And you've heard from some of our best. You know, our country would be a lot better off with any of them serving in the White House as my vice president. If we, as fellow Democrats who share fundamental core beliefs, don't tear each other down. And we're a party built on a platform of ideas and ideals. We share a fundamental belief in the notion that equality is not achieved by knocking someone else out of the way and kicking them when they're down. Instead, we believe in offering them a hand and lifting them up. It is why today I am calling on all other Democratic candidates to agree to run only positive campaigns for this Democratic nominating process. And further, I called on the Democratic National Committee to pass a resolution demanding that all the candidates run clean campaigns and not attack each other. You know, I don't buy this nonsense that negative campaigns toughen up a nominee. Save it for the Republicans. Now I can tell you also, in a positive way, that we need a Democratic nominee who's brokered international agreements, understands the Middle East, has fought global warming, a nominee who has served as a governor, balanced budgets, jobs, covered health care, and turned an economy around. In fact, I think that sounds pretty good. But, the truth is, most of America doesn't want to hear another political speech right now. And honestly, I don't blame them. They see enough politics in the nightly news, in the grim statistics of a war gone horribly wrong. A war that is mostly about politics and posturing and saving face. And that's the worst sort of politics imaginable. Our challenge as Democrats is not to just break through the voter cynicism, but also to convince them that we're up to the job that they've entrusted us with. We've won the Congress, but we still have a lot to prove. We need a Democratic nominee who's able to stand up for our principles, our values, make the case to the American people, show them we can get things done, and create a lasting Democratic majority. But I'm tired of hearing that the Democrats don't stand for anything we do. The American people need to know that we're standing up for them. And they need to know that we can get the job done. I'm proud to be a Democrat. And I'm proud also with what we've accomplished in my home state of New Mexico. I know, how many of you have visited New Mexico? Well, the rest of you, get over there. We have created 80,000 new jobs, many of them in high-tech industries. We've the lowest unemployment rate since 1978, up to 6th in the nation for job growth, 7th in the nation for personal income growth. And we didn't abandon union families along the way. And one of the first things I did as governor was reinstate collective bargaining for public employees. And we secured the first public works labor agreement in New Mexico history. And we made our prevailing wage a union wage. And when it came up to standing for the rights of working people, we didn't compromise our ideals. We acted on it. And to create all those jobs, we first passed a specific tax credit for creating good-paying jobs. You pay over the prevailing wage company, you get a tax credit. We made the rural tax credit permanent. We enacted a 3-year tax holiday for high-tech startups. And we invested state money in local companies that showed great promise for success and job creation. Rather than use tax cuts to reward the wealthy, I use them to reward putting people to work. We balanced the budget, but we also increased school funding by $600 million. And we made it sure it all went into the classroom and not the bureaucracy. In fact, the first thing we did was give teachers a raise, and we've given them a raise every 4 years. When I came into office, and I'm really proud of this, we were 48th in teacher pay. With this year's raise, we'll be 27th, and we're aiming even higher. Our teachers deserve it. Our kids are better off. Our schools are improving. Our parents believe in us again. If we can do that in New Mexico, we can do that across the country. We expanded state health insurance. We now insure in New Mexico every child under 5. We lowered the cost of health care for working families. We're helping small businesses create purchasing pools so they can get the same lower insurance rate as large employers. 2 of the bedrock principles of the Democratic Party are equal access to an excellent education and equal access to health care. For too long in this country, we've had neither. But we're making great strides in New Mexico, And we can do that across the country if we have a Democratic Congress, a Democratic presidential, a Democratic governors in a majority of states, and a Democratic mandate to finally lift this country up. And I want to tell you too, in New Mexico, our fight for equality extends to sexual orientation. For the first time in state history, we have a hate crimes law, and we've extended civil rights protections to include sexual orientation. And we're providing state health insurance for domestic partnerships. Some call New Mexico the land of enchantment. I now like to think that we live in a state of enlightenment. You know, finally, Mark Twain said, everybody complains about the weather, but nobody ever does anything about it. Is that pretty? Well, when it comes to global warming and climate change, we're doing something about it in New Mexico. I set tough standards to reduce greenhouse emissions. Maybe the country and President Bush don't follow the Kyoto Treaty, but my state does. Energy efficiency. And no other state has done as much to promote renewable energy with tax credits for wind, solar, biofuel. We've eliminated taxes on hybrid cars, and we're requiring utility companies to start producing energy from renewable sources. 10% next year, 15% 5 years, 5 years later 20%. My state has become the clean energy state. And there's no reason why we can't become the clean energy nation with an Apollo program to reduce our dependency on foreign oil. Can be done at the national level. You know, but it's not just enough to win the Congress. We need someone who can win the White House back and can win in every region of this country. And I know the usual rap on governors, that we don't know anything about foreign affairs. Well, maybe you can say that about certain governors from Texas. This governor. Not this governor. You know what? Last December, I was visited by a delegation of North Koreans. They came to New Mexico seeking my advice before the disarmament talks. They wanted to know how in the world they're supposed to work with an administration that thinks axis of evil is a bargaining position. You know, when I visited Darfur last month, Darfur, a human tragedy that we must all act on with the Save Darfur Coalition, a group of grassroots activists in this country. We negotiated a very fragile ceasefire, but I saw thousands of widows and fatherless children trying to escape the genocide, waiting in line in 100-degree heat for a month. And they wanted to know why the international community in the United States was waiting so long to do something. And you know, in the Middle East, they want to know how we can expect to bring peace to the region while shutting out Syria and Iran and not having a Middle East peace envoy. You know, the war in Iraq is not the disease. Iraq is a symptom. The disease is arrogance. The next president must be able to repair the damage that's been done to our country's reputation over the last 6 years. It's why experience in foreign affairs has never been more important. But whatever you may think of a preemptive war grounded in the choice reasoning the clouded reasoning of a vengeful administration and a misled Congress. The reality is, we've done in Iraq what we said we would do. We've rid the world of a brutal dictator. We've brought about free and fair elections 3 times over. The Iraqis now have a constitution, over 200,000 armed soldiers. They have huge oil revenue. It's time for our troops to leave with honor. When it comes to this president, I don't know how someone can be so blind to the hurt and anguish in this country and so deaf to the will of the people. This is not presidential greatness. This is a great tragedy. America is better than this. You know, a struggle for human rights is worthy of military intervention. A true threat to our country's security is worthy of war. But a struggle between a country's warring factions where both sides hate the United States is not worthy of one more lost American life. Governor Dean, I'm almost finished. He said, yeah, right. No, he didn't say that. He said that. You know, by the way, Howard Dean was right in rebuilding our parties in 50 states. He did it. As someone who served in the Congress for 14 years, I know the power they hold should they choose to wield it. The Congress passed a resolution authorizing war. They need to pass another one that overturns that authorization and brings our troops home by the end of this calendar year. And you would think that when Congress realized they were lied to, they would have done something about it. Well, they still can. Once our troops are heading out, America still has a responsibility. We still have a role to play. We have a moral responsibility to bring the Sunni and Shia together in a national reconciliation conference. And we have a strategic interest in organizing a regional conference with all of Iraq's neighbors, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, NATO, but also includes Syria and Iran to help stabilize Iraq. But you know, more than anything else, America has a moral obligation to those Americans who've laid down their lives. A Native American kid in New Mexico perished 10 days ago. The first Pueblo Native American to die. You know, some say that we can't let their sacrifices be in vain. But you'll never convince me that those slain patriots would have wanted a single additional life to be lost just to validate their own sacrifice. Is to honor their service by bringing their mission to a close, by ending the bloodshed, and finally letting the Iraqi people to set their own course. What I've just said to you would be the principles of my presidency. I'm positive about this country. I'm patriotic. I think we can resolve these problems. My only message here is we talk about energy independence, foreign policy. We talk about creating jobs and making lives better for people. The American people want a president who will bring us together as a nation, that will heal the wounds And I submit to you, you know, maybe I'm not up there in all these polls, but you are the deciders, not the man in the White House. And so I say to you today, stay loose, we got a year to go. Watch us on the trail. Demand, scrutinize. I want to come out to every one of your states and counties, well, not counties, all your states. Thank you so much. God bless the Democratic Party. God bless the United States. God bless New Mexico. And God bless you. Thank you.
It's my honor to introduce Mike Gravel. Mike Gravel was born in Springfield, Massachusetts, to French-Canadian immigrants. He served in the Army Counterintelligence Corps and earned a degree in economics from Columbia University. Mike moved to Alaska. Built a real estate business, served in the Alaska House of Representatives as Speaker, and was elected 2 terms in the U.S. Senate. During the environmental watershed decade of the 70s, Senator Gravel co-sponsored or co-authored every piece of meaningful Senate legislation dealing with air, water, waste, and energy. Senator Gravel filibustered the military draft, forcing its expiration. He forced an end to undersea nuclear weapons testing in Alaska, and initiated the national global critique of nuclear power generators. As a critic of the Vietnam War and government secrecy, Senator Gravel officially released the secret Pentagon Papers and facilitated the publication. His defiance occasioned a Supreme Court case, Gravel versus U.S., establishing the precedent that members of Congress cannot be bound by the official secrets of any presidential administration. Since leaving public office, Senator Gravel founded and led 3 nonprofit corporations dedicated to bringing the American people into the operations of government to share the power of lawmaking with elected leaders. He proposes that American voters empower themselves with a national initiative which would then permit citizens to vote for or against major policy issues that affect their lives. Senator Gravel and his wife, Whitney Stewart Gravel, are residents of Virginia. Please bring on Senator Gravel.
Governor Dean, as a lifelong Democrat, I've been proud on occasions when my party did great things, and ashamed occasionally when it did not do great things. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the leadership you're providing to organize this party, the Democratic Party, in every nook and cranny of the United States. But I've got a special feeling for you because of the courage that you did in bringing the issue of the Iraq War to the American people in your presidential candidacy. That took courage, and now it's conventional wisdom. I plan to speak power today. Speak to power today. Speaking to you, the delegates who are going to make the selection in Denver as to who will be the Democratic nominee. And speaking to the American people who will then be making their choice as to who should become the next President of the United States. But I've got one favor to ask of all of you. And it's a personal favor, and I hope you'll honor it. And that is that if anybody raises the issue about my age in this campaign, I hope you'll step forward and say, Washington needs adult supervision. But first, let me introduce my wife, Whitney, over there. The love of my life. And my sister, Marie. And between her, that lady with the iconic hat on her head is Granny D. Granny D, the biggest supporter I have in New Hampshire. A lady who at 89 years old walked across the United States on a basis of principle to do something about campaign finance reform. A lady who at 96 has given me some tips on how I should make my speech yesterday. Freedom, fairness, justice, morality, opportunity, peace, all goals of our founding fathers, and concepts central to the character of most Americans. Our founders envisioned a system where the people and their political leaders would be working together to nurture these concepts from generation to generation. Unfortunately, early on, in a compromise to perpetuate the evil institution of slavery in our Constitution, the people lost their power to amend the Constitution or to make laws. The compromise, those who compromised, they were able and they knew that the people would not vote to ratify the Constitution if slavery were included. They also knew that the people, if they had the power to make laws, that they would have outlawed them. The results of this unfortunate moral compromise took away the power of the people and brought about the primacy of representative government as we know it today, with a monopoly on legislative power. History teaches us nations fail when leaders fail their people. The decision to invade Iraq without provocation and fraudulently sold to the American people by a president consumed with messianic purpose is sadly confirms that lesson in history. The Democrats controlled the Senate on October 11, 2002, and provided political cover for George Bush to invade Iraq. The Senate leadership could have refused to even take up the resolution, and many senators who opposed it could have mounted a filibuster. But the fear of opposing a popular warrior president on the eve of a midterm election prevailed. Political calculations trumped morality, and the Middle East was set ablaze. The Democrats lost that election anyway, but more so, the American people. It was politics as usual. Given the extreme importance of any decision to go to war, and I'm anguished to make this statement, that anyone who voted for the war on October 11th, based upon what President Bush presented to them, is not qualified to hold the office of President of the United States. Political leaders must bring true qualities to office: political integrity and moral judgment. If political calculations trump morality and occasion substantial loss of human life, it reveals the sense of moral responsibility these candidates are likely to bring to the office of president. Saying I would not oppose the resolution except if I'd have known that this mess would have been created. Or worse, saying that the decision was right, but Bush botched it, is inadequate rationale for a person who may hold the most powerful position in the world. Presidents have moral responsibility for the life and death of millions of people. Politics, as usual, is not acceptable for the presidency. I feel entitled to make this statement because when I served in the Senate during the Vietnam War, I spoke truth to power. I officially released the Pentagon Papers, and as a result, Richard Nixon sued me all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. I successfully filibustered to force the end of the military draft. I filibustered alone and with others to end the appropriations for the Vietnam War. Those are my credentials. I've been there, and I know how hard it is to oppose the majority of your peers. I ask that you hold other presidential candidates to the same standard. Political leaders who hold the opportunity and the power to have stopped the Iraq War before it could get started and did nothing. They did nothing. America's current political leadership must not continue to avoid the obvious. Our presence in Iraq exacerbates the problem. 80% of the Iraqis want us out, and 70% think it's okay to kill American soldiers. We made a grave mistake. We should have the courage to admit it. We must bring our troops home now. Not 6 months from now, not a year, now. One more American death for our vital interest, it's not worth it. And we all know vital interest is code word for oil. If we don't bring our soldiers home now, what will we tell the families of those killed and maimed between now and some future arbitrary date? The sooner we get out of Iraq, the sooner we can turn to the international community for diplomatic solutions to bring an end to the sectarian civil war that we caused. The Democrats in control of Congress need to act resolutely. And I'm not talking about some mealy-mouthed, non-binding resolution. They need to precipitate a constitutional confrontation with George Bush. Under the Constitution, the Congress is the only body that can declare war. Implicit in that power is the power to make peace, the power to end war. Even the commander-in-chief executing a war is subservient to the Congress's war powers. The Founding Fathers specifically created this constitutional check on the executive authority, and it was reaffirmed by the War Powers Act of 1973. Congress is our only hope to end this carnage before January 20th, 2009. Carnage and death for George Bush unleashed on the world. Our nation is in crisis. This crisis is greater than most people realize, and in some ways more significant than terrorism and the Iraq War. We have become a nation ruled by fear. Since the Second World War, various political leaders have fostered fear in the American people. Fear of communism, fear of terrorism, fear of immigrants, fear of people based on race and religion, fear of gays and lesbians in love who just want to get married, fear of people who are just different. It is fear that allows our political leaders to manipulate us all and distort our national priorities. Fear has allowed our political leaders to spend more on military armaments than is spent collectively by all the other nations in the world. Who are we afraid of? Are we that paranoid? Despite the trillions of dollars we spent on defense, the Bush Pentagon sent our soldiers into harm's way in Iraq without the proper body armor or sufficiently armored Humvees. And worse, the Bush administration plays games with the problems of our veterans, in effect waging a budget war against the only Americans who made sacrifices for George Bush's oil war. Shame on you, George Bush, letting the profits of arms contractors trump the needs of our veterans. President Eisenhower, upon leaving office, warned of the dangers to democracy posed by a military-industrial complex. Since his warning, we have seen a rise in the culture of militarism. His concern that our foreign policy might be dictated by the financial interest of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry has been fully realized. We should remember a lesson of the First World War. The presence of excessive weaponry in the hands of nation states by itself, all by itself, is sufficient to induce war. The decision to wage the preemptive war in Iraq raises the specter of much deeper problems facing the global community. Nuclear proliferation. On this issue, we should look to ourselves first. The U.S. has more deliverable nuclear devices than the rest of the world combined. One Trident nuclear submarine can hold the entire world hostage. Yet we continue to build more nuclear devices. Who in the world are we prepared to nuke? We started an arms race in space a decade ago, without provocation. Now the Bush administration is pressuring Eastern European countries to let us station anti-ballistic missiles on their soil. Most Americans are unaware that the Bush administration, under the cover of the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan, has been aggressively initiating a new arms race with Russia and China, whose defense budgets are minuscule compared to ours. Our political leadership, controlled by a military industrialist, insists on pursuing a Cold War strategy in a post-Cold War era. American politicians often boast of American exceptionalism. You've heard it from this dais. We are indeed a great nation, one that has made significant contributions to humanity. But our leaders are promoting delusional thinking when boasting that the United States and Americans are superior to the rest of the human race. We are no better than anybody else, and no worse. Unfortunately, the United States is not number one where it counts. There are only two industrialized nations in the world that do not provide health care for their citizens: the United States and South Africa. Despite spending more per capita on health care than any other nation in the world, we rank 37th for overall health performance. The United States ranks 49th in literacy. Time magazine last spring, on the cover, noted that 30% of our students do not graduate from high school, condemning them to a diminished economic existence. How can we ever compete in the world with that yoke around our neck? 30% don't graduate from high school. Of the global Fortune 500 companies, only 50 are American. Wall Street and many corporate executives are awash in huge salaries and bonuses that verge on obscenities. Yet the average American worker's compensation grew only 0.1% in the last decade. China, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan hold 40% of Americans' debt. Any one of these countries could throw us into an economic tailspin. America's political leadership is in denial about the gravity and the scope of our problems, viewing them almost exclusively from a national perspective. In fact, the major problems we face are global in nature. Energy, the environment, terrorism, drugs, war, immigration, disease, economic and cultural globalizations. These are the problems that require global solutions that can only be addressed by concerted diplomacy, not jingoistic American superpower superiority. As the current and former residents of the Gulf Coast to rank our national political leadership for effectiveness, either now or during the last 17 months following the ravages of Hurricane Katrina and Rita. These tragedies exposed to the world that large numbers of Americans subsist in what is closer to a third world economy. These tragedies expose how callous we are to the plight of the poor. These tragedies expose strains of racism we refuse to acknowledge. But in the face of painfully slow, ineffective government response, these tragedies inspired many average Americans to go to New Orleans, to go to the coast, and help rebuild not only homes, but a spirit of community. Our political leadership must begin to tell Americans the truth. So I'll start right now. The United States is number one. We are number one in the production of weapons. We are number one in consumer spending. We are number one in government, commercial, and personal debt. We are number one in the number of people we have in prison. We are number one in energy consumption, and we are number one in the environmental pollution we produce. That's what we do. There's nothing to be proud of. Our Democratic congressional leaders are attempting to address some of these problems. But there are some serious limitations to the ability of even well-intentioned political leaders. In part because of the limitations inherent in representative government, and in part because of human nature. Now, some skeptics might say that twisting the truth and for political ends is just politics as usual, and that politics as usual is in the nature of representative government. They accept as benign a system of 30,000 Washington lobbyists bundling campaign contributions for the election of politicians who then support and vote for the interest of those lobbyists' clients. But the system is not benign. The corruption is real and cannot be reformed by those who are enriched by the corruption. Only the people can correct these structural flaws in representative government if they become lawmakers as envisioned by George Washington when he said, "The basis of all political systems is the right of the people to make and to alter their constitutions of government." He was right. He was right to affirm lawmakers, that the people can be lawmakers on a par with their representative lawmakers in Congress. We, the people, are the fount of all political power. We have the right to propose and enact the National Initiative for Democracy, a legislative package that includes a constitutional amendment and a federal statute that empowers Americans as lawmakers. A majority of Americans, 60 million, will have to vote for this law in order to make it the law of the land. The National Initiative does not abolish representative government. In fact, it makes it work a hell of a lot better than it does now. But what this does, it adds a check to our system of checks and balances. You know what that check is? We the people, you the people. The National Initiative will provide a mechanism for us to finally have a government, not just of and for the people, but for the first time in our history, a government by the people. I believe that we can have laws and policies that are more moral and more reflective of the public interest if the people can exercise their collective self-interest by voting on major issues that affect their lives. 24 states and several hundred communities already permit the people to make laws. Why not make laws at the national level? The National Initiative I hope you'll go to website nationalinitiative.us and learn more about this. And vote. And ask yourself, do you agree or disagree that we need to reform our governance structure by bringing people into the operation of government as lawmakers and in partnership with their elected officials? Think about that. See if you agree with that. I'm proud to announce that the Democratic Party has been responsible for a number of great social advances in the past. However, as one senator recently put it, the Democratic Party anguishes for a new identity. Let me suggest the National Initiative as an epoch-defining identity for the Democratic Party. The National Initiative would provide an opportunity for the Democratic Party to reclaim its role in American history, with an advancement in human governance on a par with the nascent Republican Party's role in ending slavery on American soil. The Democratic Party has the opportunity to undertake a change in the paradigm of human governance and champion the lost vision of our founders and help make we the people lawmakers. The statement of our founders cannot be clearer about their vision, and you can read it on the placards in the audience. They had faith in the American people. Can we have any less faith in ourselves? In this campaign, you will hear from many who would be president. Judge us not on how much money we can raise from those who buy influence. Rather, judge us on what we've done and judge us on solutions we offer. I have unreserved faith in the people. Let me state that again. Because to buy in to empowering the people, you have to have unreserved faith in the people. And I'll use my candidacy to champion empowering the people as lawmakers. As real lawmakers with real power, which is the real power that exists in all governments of the world, making laws. Thank you.
my honor today to introduce Governor Tom Vilsack. Governor Vilsack was twice elected governor of Iowa, first in 1998, overcoming a 25-point deficit to become Iowa's first Democratic elected governor in 32 years. Tom Vilsack is a lawyer. He's also a former mayor of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and he's a former state senator. By the end of his 8 years as governor of Iowa, his state underwent a dramatic change. Tom led Democrats to the majority in both houses of the Iowa legislature, turning a red state into a blue state. For the first time in more than a decade, more Democrats are registered than Republicans in Iowa. During that time, Tom also served as chair of the Democratic Governors, and he led Democrats to state house victories all across this country. Despite the Republican-controlled legislature in Iowa, Governor Vilsack expanded health care coverage to more than 90,000 uninsured children. He expanded access to early childhood education, and he made Iowa a national leader in renewable energy. All of this while balancing the budget and providing targeted tax relief to working families. Tom Vilsack also inspired Iowans to have the courage to create change and to envision that change for all Americans. He built a solid foundation of progress in Iowa that ensures countless opportunities for people of all ages. As president, Tom will lead America in a new direction. He will strengthen our schools, improve our healthcare systems, achieve energy security, and he will change the course in Iraq by bringing our troops home. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today someone who's not only changed the landscape in Iowa, but someone who's genuinely committed to changing the landscape in America. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Governor Tom Vilsack.
Mayor, thank you very much for that kind introduction, something you and I share, and it's a great privilege to have been a mayor, and I appreciate the kind introduction. And first of all, let me say how privileged I am to be here this morning among so many Democrats who care so deeply about our party and about our nation. And I want to take this opportunity specifically to acknowledge the chair of our party and DNC members for the support and confidence that you had in all 50 states of the United States. I think our chair recognized that our democratic values are welcome in all parts of our great country. Mr. Chair, thank you very much for your service. And good morning to all of you. I'm Tom Vilsack. That's a name that my adopted parents gave to me. I didn't know my birth mother, and I didn't know my birth father. The fact is, I know very little about the circumstances of my birth, other than that I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Shortly Shortly after I was born, my birth mother handed me over to nuns in a Catholic orphanage where I stayed until I was adopted. You know, in this city they talk a lot about no child left behind. Well, the fact is, I was a child left behind. I was born an outsider. I've always understood the importance of being an outsider, and I've always understood what it feels like not to belong. You know, I've dedicated my life to those who work hard, those on the outside looking in, those who struggle every day to make sure that their lives and their children's lives are better. For me, those are the people that I respect and admire the most in this great country. My adopted mom was one of the great and most amazing people in my life. Along with my wife, Christy, who's here today, she was an inspiration for me. She was an alcoholic, and she was addicted to prescription drugs. But she overcame those addictions, and she taught me a great, valuable life lesson. And she also allowed our family that had been separated by addiction to be united again. The lesson she taught me was simple, and that is that each of us has great capacity to overcome fear. That indeed, before hope, there is courage. The courage to create change. And that's why I'm here today, as a candidate for president and as a Democrat asking for your support. Because I believe our country now more than ever needs that courage to create change in Iraq and across this great country. We long to be the United States of America, united in common purpose and shared purpose. Sadly, today in this city, our nation's capital, so much of what takes place is motivated by fear. The Iraq policy, our foreign policy, our energy policy, even our health care policy, all motivated and arising out of fear. You know, I was in Seattle not too long ago, and I had the opportunity to speak to a group of young women. And one of the young women brought her 5-year-old son to the event. And after I was finished speaking, this little fella came up to me, and he asked me very seriously, would 100 more troops in Iraq make a difference? The fella's 5 years old. And I said, no, I don't think so. He said, would 1,000 more troops make a difference? I said, no, I don't think so. And then he looked at me, and he said, and I quote, I'm frightened every day. I'm frightened every day. You know, my fellow Democrats, I'm tired of being in a country where 5-year-old children are frightened. It's time for change. I am tired of a government that reminds me every day to be afraid, and I am tired of a government that focuses only on preventing evil and never talking about promoting goodness. We've been motivated by fear. Our policies have been directed by fear. Fear of special interests, fear of foreign governments, fear of the unknown. Well, let me say this very clearly. No family can live in fear. No government can be run in fear. And the American dream can never be revived by fear. This party has many great legacies, but the greatest legacy of all is its ability to inspire people to overcome their fears and to embrace change. And the time has come in this country for us to replace fear with courage, the courage to create change. We are at our best as Democrats when we stand up and are inspired by those values that move us and never stand down to those who wish to scare us. We are at our best and do our best when we're motivated by a desire to effect real positive change, not change that results simply from political pressure. Let me be clear. I'm not talking about small change. I'm not talking about incremental change. I'm talking about bold and courageous change. Let me give you a few examples. Adding a few dollars and tweaking a reauthorized No Child Left Behind is not real change. Ending No Child Left Behind as we know it is real change, and replacing it with a real, true commitment to the children of this country. In this competitive world we live in, we cannot afford to be a nation of great standardized test takers. We must be a nation of creative and innovative thinkers. And that's what our education policy should be. Identifying earmarks, excuse me, I see the time, Mr. Chairman. Take
the first to adopt the limits
Take it off the next speech I give. Identifying earmarks and passing budget resolutions is not real change. Balancing budgets, making the tough choices to eliminate what I call the birth tax is real change. Think about it. That's what the deficit is. It's a tax on our children, and we need to eliminate that tax. Governor, I know something about that. I balanced 8 budgets. I left my successor with a surplus. And I can tell you that we had to make tough choices, but I'm proud of that record as a governor. Giving lip service to renewable fuel production and climate control and climate change is not real change. That's not real change. Building a renewable fuel industry, creating opportunities for us to be the best nation in the world in conservation, that's real change. That's what we did in Iowa. We built a renewable fuel industry. We expanded access to renewable fuel and to wind energy, and we created new jobs and better paying jobs. And I'm proud of that record. And that's real change. Promising access to health care coverage is not real change. Doing the tough work of actually reducing the number of uninsured, making sure that coverage is universally available, and lowering the cost of health care, that's real change, and that's what we did in Iowa. We were only one of 2 states last year to reduce the number of uninsured. It can be done, but it requires the courage to create real change in the country. And let me speak about Iraq. The reality of capping troops or reducing the number of troops at some point in time in the future, that's not real change. Real change is saying we want our troops out of harm's way now. Real change is saying to the Iraqis, it is your responsibility. You must assume responsibility now for your country. You must put yourself at risk, not our young men and women. That's real change. We cannot wait for a president or the Congress to make a political calculation as to when and how this is happening. Look around here today. I'm not sure how many people are in this hall, but let us assume for the sake of conversation that there are roughly 500 or 600 people. Look to your right and to your left. Understand that delay will mean that the person to your right and to your left, representing one soldier who will likely die, will occur over the next year. 1,000 soldiers will die, 5,000 more will be hurt. It is time for us to clearly say, the war must end, and our troops must be brought home now. Let me say that I think Congress has a constitutional responsibility and a moral obligation to do it now. Not a cap, an end. Not eventually, immediately. Those who voted for the war, those who voted to continue to support the war, those who voted to continue funding the war, can surely vote to stop the war. think that's a good thing if you want to affect change. As an insider, it's difficult to affect change. Staying the course is a bit easier. Basically, doing what you've always done is the way things most often happen. As an outsider, we can change things, and we are a party of outsiders. We represent outsiders, and need I remind you, we win as outsiders. The last 2 times we have won an election, it has been with an outsider who was a governor. That is the message. It is important for us to also reflect on how we turn red states to blue. That's something I know a little something about. The first Democratic governor in 32 years in my state, the first to be reelected in 36 years, the first to be succeeded by a Democrat in 72 years. We gave that Democratic governor a Democratic legislature for the first time in 42 years. If we have the courage to create change, we can change red to blue, and this is the America that we can have. We can have an America that respects rights and choices. We can have an America that understands and appreciates all people, regardless of race or creed or color or religion or sexual orientation. We can have an America that can build an economy that works for all. An America that is energy secure. An America that can reclaim moral leadership in the issue of climate change. An America that can lead the world. An America that can be part of an effort to end world hunger, to promote literacy. An America that shows the goodness of our heart. And most importantly of all, with the courage to create change, we can be an America that is no longer at war and is at peace. I'm proud to be a Democrat, and you are too. I'm proud of what we did in 2006 in taking the Congress back. Now our goal, our challenge, is to take the White House back in 2008. We know what we have to do. All we need is the courage to get it done. Thank you, and God bless.